That's correct. However, because Mass DOT requested AECom to change their design that would fit the overlay and the coplaning and overlay, that's what they did. So they spent money to change it back to, you know, a coplaning and overlay. Now we're talking about possibly shipping it back. The reason I wanted to bring this before you tonight is because the estimate come through at $131,200 for services there, and there's a breakdown of the scope of work to be done. I do not agree with those numbers. I don't think we should be paying AECom another $131,000.
Especially if they're not doing the whole job.
And I think they had some internal problems there that they had a change of the guard, we have a new engineer that's in charge, but I believe that a lot of our Chapter 90 money was spent. And I'm just not satisfied. Personally, I'll go on record to say, I am not satisfied with AECom's performance throughout this project.
Okay.
And whether the board at this point wants to change it on to another firm or look into it, I don't know, Jeff. You know, I'm just saying, we've spent way too much money.
Dan?
Is this project coming to the Massachusetts Joint Transportation Committee?
Yes, it is. It's state and federal.
Right. So, who's our guy that's on that committee?
I'm the alternate.
Okay. So do you attend those meetings?
I attend some of the MMA meetings at the JTC.
Okay, the point I'm trying to make is, they might be there as a resource to help us secure the funding we need. And I think it's not totally out of the question that if they want to cut back on the program and not go through with the full depth recovery in certain sections, that they pull some kind of a bond in the event that it does settle within certain years, pick the number. And what will happen is you have to put a bond against a future project that they have that's 8 years down the road. You know, tip list. So they pick a project that's, 8 years down the road, so tip list. If they're that confident.
Well, here lays the problem. If we don't act on Baldwin Road pretty soon, on schedule, we're going to lose our federal funding.
Right, so the
So the
police
project
just
won't
won't
happen.
do it.
So by doing what you're talking about, may not be the solution at this point in time to move forward. Because we're not far from losing our federal funding, which is a big chunk of the project. So I recommend that, at this point, that you allow time for AECom, perhaps there's two nicks. One's the boss, and the second nick that's our project manager. I would get them up here to justify another $131,000. Because granted, it's not coming out of our taxation, but it is our Chapter 90 money,
Right.
which is just working on the rest of our.
Right.
So, that being said about Bowman Road, I don't get any questions.
Julie?
I just had a question about, we just got word that we've received our Chapter 90 money for this year. Do we have a breakdown of where it's allocated to go?
That's his next.
Okay, good.
Before you go to your next item, do you want us to call AECom to set up a meeting? To come to it?
My office can call
Okay.
and set up a meeting. I know you've got a lot going on in your office, so we can handle that part of it since.
I'll attend, and so I'll attend on behalf of the board.
Okay, well, I was hoping to set it up.
For our next regular meeting? Our next
The
meeting?
reason being this is, whether it's good or bad, the public can sit,
Yep.
participate or ask questions about if it gets to that point. At this point, like I say, they're asking for another $100,000. And I know they just didn't pull that number out of a hat. I know, like I said, Mass DOT was driving all of it. But at some point in time, it's got to be wrong.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to get them, see if they'll come to our next meeting. We'll
Okay.
put them on first if they want. They can come in.
All right.
I just want to add one thing
Sure.
along that line. I've heard from Shirley Shiver, NetScott. She's a project manager that does the soft side of this entire project, the rights of way, the necessary thinkings, domain, whatever, project planning, and she wants to schedule a meeting to come out here, and she's expressed her concerns about losing the project, but in the on-again, off-again relationship I've had in this town, I've had very little help and very little support out of Mass DOT. So I go on record as saying, it doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy that someone who sits in Boston and manages a portfolio of projects has nothing but issues, problems, concerns, never brings solutions, ideas, or an attitude that I'm here to help you. Never. Always, I'm here to be an obstacle to you. Always.
That's what's been in our office. I know, you know, we did mailers, we sent them out to all the people on the road that had to have the paperwork we signed. I believe we have approximately 20 or 23, 4 letters that came back out of the 50 or 60 that was sent out. So we constantly get a call from Shirley, maybe every other day, every third, wanting to know where we are with those letters. And she's now, you know, directing us that we've got to go door to door and, or a Saturday or a Sunday, knock on your door to ask for their signatures. Our next method starting tomorrow morning, we're going to do a call. We're going to make a call. We send it out, we're going to make a call, see if we get some phone call responses, hopefully get some letters in. We may have to do some foot traffic on it at some point. But like I said, Shirley calls me, calls our office at least twice a week, at least, if not three. So that's where we are with going.
Quick question.
Yes, Pat?
But is there, the plans available for anybody to look at? People have been wondering which side of the road, for instance, the sidewalk will be on. I know beginning up to Prospect, it's gonna be both sides, and then
Yep.
which side after that? Does it swap?
Plans can be seen. I have a full set in my office, and there's also a full set in Selectmen's office.
Oh, cool, all right.
So you can look, but I mean, if you have questions, you can come up to my office and, or call, make sure I'm ready for it, if I'm not working. The other place, and, I can pretty much answer everything you want. And I'll tell you what, Jean, my secretary, has become very familiar with the plans. She's almost an official blueprint reader now, so she's doing very well.
All right, thanks.
All right, can I speak about the last?
Yep.
Okey dokey.
Quiet, please.
Our Chapter 90 allotment has been released. We'll be receiving the $344,216 added to our Chapter 90 account. Well, we had a balance in there of $71,264.46, which gave us a running balance of $415,480.46. I looked at it and I estimated it into this number here for Baltimore Road. If the board was to agree with that number that they're requesting, $131,200. And I haven't got the final figure for our contribution to Back Bay for the paving portion of that project. I talked with Mike from CDBG today. He needed a day or so to check his numbers, but the last he knew he had 63,000 and some change out of the grant money to put towards the paving. So nowhere near all the Chapter 90 money that was talked about is going to be needed for paving. So he's going to get back to me in the next, I think tomorrow or Wednesday on that. So now another problem came about. Right now we are down to one front end loader. While working at the project the other day, the loader that we're asking to replace, and it didn't pass, blew up, or it's got so much rust on it. One of the brake lines in the front rusted out, and it rusted out in a real bad place, which is right on the front hub. Everything's got to come apart to repair it. That happened right after the day we were setting the buildings, actually. And I had a conversation with one of the selectmen, and they, advised me, don't put no more money into that motor, for what it's going to cost to do it. Well, then the brake line blew after that. So right now, we got it back to the highway barn. It's parked at the highway barn. It's red line. Can't use it right now unless we put some serious money into that motor. financial investment to do that. I think we've seen our better days with that loader, and I'm asking the board's support tonight to use up to $170,000 of Chapter 90 money to purchase a loader, which is allowed under the rules. We cannot operate our highway department efficiently throughout the course of this summer and this coming winter on one loader. It can't happen. Now, I did some calculations here. With the first number I gave you, $415,480, that's our budget, that's our balance in Chapter 90. If we took $131,200 out of that, would give us a balance of $284,280. If we took the loader off that balance, would leave $114,280.46 remaining in Chapter 90. So we would have a little over $100,000 balance in Chapter 90 for a project, or leave it sit there until next year, no roads done this year. And that has to be the way, that's the way it is. There are some other ways we can look at it. I did, over the course of the weekend, spend some of my own time looking at some used loaders. Get a bunch of hours on them. Buying a used truck is one thing. Buying a loader that somebody else can just work to death, unless you find that perfect one, somebody lost it, went out of business, got repossessed, whatever. Those are far in between. And they're not all that local here. You gotta travel. And I don't mind traveling. Actually, there was one in Hawaii that you guys want me to go look at. But anyways, I would strongly recommend that that type of equipment that we would purchase is new. I'm not afraid to use stuff, but at least know you got a warranty, we're good to go. So the other thing I can do for the board is, if you want me to do it, is we could go out to bid for a loader to see what the numbers come in. I budgeted $170,000. Chances are that was the budget number. I see that coming under that amount of money. So it would be less of a draw off our Chapter 90.
Doug first?
My question is, if you get a new, what would your expected life expectancy be for it? Not to keep it till it runs into the ground, but the normal life expectancy of that piece of equipment. Is that 10 years, 15 years?
The rule would be about 15 years on a loader, 20 if you're lucky. This loader here is a 1997. So we've got our time on this loader. And the other thing to do is to offset the purchase price. We can, I have not done this step yet because to see what they give us for a trade. It typically comes down to its parts machine.
Yep.
But however, and with some help, Jeff's got a good background here on equipment and whatnot. I'm sure Jeff would work with us to, I don't think this deal would go.
Julie?
19,800 pounds.
I have a couple of concerns. I was getting a little worried when they were holding back the Chapter 90 money because Back Bay was progressing. And I believe for this phase that's active right now, we pledged $160,000, up to $160,000 of Chapter 90 money. And we only had 70 in the account as of that point. So I want to make sure that we're not double spending the over-committing ourselves, because I'm not sure if they're going to go back out and try to get the next phase in for Fisher Street this construction season. And that was up to $125,000, I believe, was the town's matching portion for the paving. So those are the kinds of things that keep me awake at night.
Well, we've done a little bit of that math and what you're talking about. When I came up with my bottom number, that's factoring in 131,280. If that number there is negotiable, and that number can be dropped by X amount of dollars, that puts the balance back in chapter 90 a little better than 115,000. So,
Right, but
looking
then-
at the next phase of Balmer Road, we're only on Balmer Road. Next phase of Back Bay, which would be just Fisher Street. I don't believe that Fisher Street, the length of Fisher Street is gonna cost the town, cost us $120,000 to
Right.
pave that road.
But we also have to do this phase, which was up to 160.
That's correct, but remember, CDBG is saying that they're gonna be able to pledge around $63,000 in change towards.
Right, so we
towards
have
this
to find
project.
100,000 for
find
that
100.
section and up to 125 possible for the next section.
That's correct. My purpose really tonight wasn't to ask the board to take a solid vote to spend 170 for a loader tonight. I wanted to bring it to your attention that the loader is out of service now. You don't see any point in putting any more money into this money thing. I wanted to see if I had your support. I'm waiting for the numbers for CDBG to come back. Exactly what it's gonna cost us, our portion of chapter 90 to finish this current project. In the event of, and/or get permission to go out to bid, get some specs going, go out to bid, see what our numbers are.
People, you really need to be quiet. I'm having a hard time hearing him with all the chatter. I'm sorry.
So that we have a hard, firm number to make a financial decision on whether or not we want to take that amount of money out of chapter 90 for a local.
A question.
Jeff?
Do you have an idea, do you have what you're looking for in a loader? As far as what you want, accessories on it, the tools, the coupler, the third valve? I mean, do you have that figured out on paper, so when you go to various dealers, companies, you know, you compare apples with apples? Like if you want a third valve, Volvo, CAT, down the line, Deere, all the rest, a coupler, bam, bam, you know,
That's correct.
do you have that?
Basically, all I'm looking for in a loader is that the loader come with a third function so that we can put the snow plow on the front of it, and then it comes with a front bucket. And if Volvo was the winning machine or company, it would fit all the implements that we have currently right now. If we go with another vendor, we'll say it's John Deere, CAT, or whatever, our implements would not fit that particular unit. So all the implements that we got, the tools that we got for our loader now would only be unique to that one loader. So that's why I'm hoping to try to keep it a Volvo so that our tools are interchangeable.
Well, on that point, I do know that Caterpillar, I know that for a fact, that they make a coupler that fits on a Caterpillar loader that accepts Volvo tools. And if you can get a coupler that accepts CAT tools, but they do have a coupler that pins onto a Caterpillar loader that you can, when you order your loader, you can ask for that coupler that will take Volvo tools. So the other,
John Deere does the same thing.
so
It is an adapter that you buy, however, again, that was a money thing, so
So-
back to that end,
but
but I didn't want to move forward and draw up a hard set of specs without the board's blessing or support, or at least open up a dialogue on, we've got a problem now, and how do you want to address it?
that's what I would like to see is what you want in your loader,
Okay, I can put some specs together.
as far as what you want to order on that loader.
Yes,
Is this the one that you were trying to replace at town meeting?
Yes.
What were you gonna do then? What were you planning to do then? What were you
I was looking to replace the loader.
gonna buy?
We were looking for a debt exclusion for 1 year to make the first year lease payment on, and then go back to the town and see what our finances are next year, whether we could take it out of the general fund or available money, or whether we have to go for another debt exclusion, or however the financial end of it was, is really up to the board of selectmen. But I was looking to get,
If you lease it, still,
that would be a lease purchase. That's why it was only $30,000 the first year.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Pat?
How about a lease for a year right now to get us by, so you have 2 loaders again for now? I mean, maybe get a proposal from local,
Well, we wouldn't have a funding source just to lease. We couldn't lease it out of Chapter 90.
Okay.
Bob Mitchell?
Because if we support this loader and buy the loader, will there be enough money left for the asphalt to fix Rosedale Road? Without a lot of engineering?
Yes, Bob. Anyways, food for thought. Just want to let you know. I wouldn't have been coming here tonight if it wasn't for the fact that brakes broke off. And because at least we still could have used it right in time.
Well, I think, are we all in agreement that no more money should be put into this particular piece of equipment?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Okay, all right, so.
It sounds like it's
We're
had
in
its
agreement
run.
on that.
Would the board be okay with if I drew up some specs, get them, show them to Jeff, and, you know, he's good with the heavy equipment too, and then perhaps go out to, put it out to bid and see what our numbers come in at? I mean, to put it out to bid, it's gonna cost us for the central register and the local papers to put it out, but it would be, you know, a small amount of money to know what the real number's gonna be.
Where would that money come out of?
I take that out of the highway budget, out of our operating budget, that's what I usually do.
It's up to the board.
Can I ask, sure. How come we got less money in towns like Westminster and Richmond? I mean, we are so broke. Why did we get for Chapter 95?
Actually, they increased that chapter 90 by a certain amount. But chapter 90 is figured on population, and there's factors in there that generate
Miles of roads and something else.
population, road size, how many miles.
We already had enough precincts,
That's all I have on the board, if you have any other questions.
Okay. Any questions for Bob? Yes, Mr. Dennis?
I don't know if this is new business or old business. Well, this has to do with transportation of town funds. And if the board will allow me a little latitude, I was treasurer of the Auto Sportsman Club for many years. And one of my biggest problems was how do I transport the money to the bank in Ghana? Because I was always afraid that someone was going to hold me up. Good thing I didn't know it. Well, I always watched it because I would take different routes. And sometimes I would go through Cumberland Center, sometimes through East Cumberland, sometimes through Otter River. I took different routes to deposit the money. Well, it's a dangerous thing, and more so these days. It's my understanding, and I may be wrong, that we have a person that works for the town that transports town funds in their personal vehicle. And I think that that is extremely dangerous. Dangerous for the person, dangerous for the town. Just like the town's funds. The person was held up and we lost our town funds. Well, both dangerous for the person. It's my understanding the person talking about transportation, I don't think the person is reimbursed for the use of their vehicles. On top of that, my past experience, if you use your vehicle, you have to pay additional insurance for your vehicle. And I can't understand why in this town, when we have a police department with people working in the police department, why the police department is not transporting the individual county funds to the bank? Thank you.
Good question.
I wasn't aware of that.
I bet we have more than one that's doing it too.
Just, I wasn't aware of that, so I'm glad you brought that up. We will definitely check into that. Okay, can we move on? We still have a lot to do.
Yeah,
There we go. What do you got, Doug? We got a lot to get through. It's already 9 o'clock.
And I can certainly wait until you finish your new business plans. I do have a senior center issue that came to light late this afternoon, so I didn't ask to get on the agenda.
Okay.
So it's entirely up to you.
Can you do it in 5 minutes or less?
I believe so.
Go. I know. No, yeah, he did. He just gave us a vehicle. I'll give him 5 minutes.
Give me 7.
And again, I'm somewhat embarrassed, especially after Jeff's, great recognition of the project. But late this afternoon, I got a call from the contractor that Nancy had called asking about the bonds. In the issue, it was a week ago Friday is when it all came together that we could get the building set on Monday. So it happened, from like 3 o'clock Friday afternoon until 7 o'clock Monday morning, all of this transpired. So I let it slip my mind or whatever, but I didn't follow up on what are our bond issues. Now, with the concrete contractor, you guys graciously waived the performance bond, which I would hope you can do for this contractor. The payment bond is a secondary issue. And in this particular contractor's case, he doesn't provide any material, so he has no vendors to pay. I kind of had it in the back of my mind that if he didn't have any vendors to pay, he wouldn't need to put up a payment bond, but I'm not 100% certain of that. So, again, it was my oversight and the excitement of getting everything ready in, a day and a half's time. So, that's what I'm here to say.
We're referring to the set crew.
Correct.
Okay. Well, it's true, Doug did a bad thing. It's true.
Shame on you, Doug.
And we violated certainly policy and process, if not the law. The good news is that the town of Templeton holds all the cards because the work has been performed. It's more than satisfactory, as you've heard. Have they left the site yet?
Yeah. Well, they will have to come back because we couldn't get the structural engineer on site Monday. So right now, the building is sitting on temporary blocks.
They have jacked them and removed.
Right, so they'll have to come back to jack them and set them down. But that's probably a half a day's worth of work is all they have left to do.
Is it fair to say you're satisfied with their work?
Absolutely.
Is it fair to say they've done good work?
Yes.
Then waiving the bond requirements, while a bit unusual, is kind of a moot point because the bonds are to protect us, not to protect them. So as long as they complete the work and it's to our satisfaction and a good product ensues, then no harm has been done by this because the bond is there to protect the town from shoddy work and shoddy labor.
Okay. My only concern where it's a modular, I live in a modular home, so a performance bond is going to cover more than just when they're on site.
Workers' comp costs, et cetera, et cetera.
What I'm thinking of is, suppose they didn't get one of them on quite right and something happens in 6 months.
Yeah,
Without the performance bond, we might be holding the bag.
it's true.
That's the only thing.
So again, I would think that would fall under the structural engineer issue, not the set crew. The set crew is setting them on the foundation.
Right.
If they were to collapse, that would indicate that the foundation or the structural steel wasn't adequate.
I wasn't necessarily talking collapse. I mean, if they don't,
They settle and they have to come back and reset.
well, no, if they don't attach it properly, we'll say, especially the end units, they could shift and they could fall off the edge of the foundation.
They'll be all welded to the steel.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if they don't set it right, that's part of their performance. That's all, that's my only concern. Virginia?
Is there a new issue with, where they, I didn't really understand it. They said that you're gonna have to get, some pieces of steel to go in.
No, the issue was that the gap between one of the two pieces is larger than the engineer calculated or was expected. So we met with the building inspector, we met with the architect, and we discussed with the engineer the issue. They all understand the issue, and all agree that once we set the buildings down and weld them, it will be 100%
A
satisfactory.
non-issue.
Frank?
Yeah, and I think Doug is saying it's true. And we've been before you before, a few weeks,
Yep.
few months ago.
Yep.
Anything under $100,000, we don't have to have a performance on it. This is way under 100,000. We're talking a crane operator, 7,000, 10,000. So we meet that threshold. So it's kind of hard. We did this for the concrete strategies. How do you tell them we can't do it to you?
I'm just throwing it out there.
You know what I'm saying? You can't have a double standard. This is already, and we're satisfied. Cranes did his job. He's gone. He worked for himself. And maybe he's not going to need a bond for himself. And I know it's a little bit unusual, but we're covered. Look at all the money. We haven't given anybody a penny. Yet we're not going to give them a penny. So we're done and we're satisfied. So how can you? We get 100% bond by having money now.
Right. That's what you can do until, and you can hold this up by 3 months, 6 months, just not paying, waiting for it to settle, waiting for the issues to resolve before you actually release the funds. Or release half of it and say, since you didn't provide a bond, we're holding the other half. Granted, I'll grant you this is all making it up, but it's not harmful.
Okay. Bud?
And just something I think you guys left out. Part of the original specs were that these units were to be self-catching sheet metal screws. We're going to attach the buildings to the framework, which is connected to the concrete work. Since then, meeting down there and whatnot, we talked, it's going to be welded to the framework so that in the event of a high windstorm or whatever, we're not relying on sheet metal screws to hold the building down. It's going to have a solid anchoring system. So.
Okay. And is each unit connected to each other too? Like
They bolt it together on the top.
Yeah.
They weld the solid.
Diana?
I think she heard it.
Who's going to do the welding? Is that BC?
That's the steel crews who will do the welding.
So they already met.
Knowledge they have over. And the set crew guys, they're not, it's not like it's a fly-by-night contractor, or, one of these giant contractors that's just looking to, take advantage of the customer. These are guys that do business in town, they stake their reputation on their work. They've done a lot of work in Templeton as well as all the surrounding towns. They have a very good reputation. I have zero concern that we will have any performance type issues or payment issues in their work.
And then I'm going to get paid towards that.
They did a great job today. They really did. We were there all day.
And had we been able to get the structural engineer on site Tuesday, they would have been done and gone in 2 days. They would have had 100% finished in 2 days. The engineer got out of the hospital, so he wasn't able to.
Yeah. So if the board, I was thinking the same thing. Kurt. If the board is so inclined, I'll take a motion to waive the performance bond for, who is it for? Multi-construction? Multi-construction.
So we're just waiving the performance bond?
Well,
They want us to waive both, right?
they don't, I don't know that they need the payment bond if they're not paying anybody. There's no subcontractors that they're paying on any of that.
It would be like Astro Crane.
Right.
If they had material, but the guy that owns Astro Crane is a the same guy that said it. There's no other vendors.
Right, he's not paying anybody,
It was over our.
so.
Right.
I would move that the performance bond be waived for this project, for this,
Do you want us to say payment as well? I didn't know.
I do two motions.
Okay.
Two motions. One on each.
All right, do two motions.
so I'm moving that the performance bond is waived.
Second. Whoever wants to take it.
Julie or Jeff, it was a tie. All right, Pat?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
Now,
I make a motion that
motion
the
for the
payment bond be waived for Astro and Molten.
okay,
Second.
and it's been seconded by Pat. Pat?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't let it happen again.
Now, back to my list.
Okay.
All right. I have a letter here from Scott Gauthier, the Director of School Counseling and Guidance, listing the Templeton Scholarship recipients for 2012's class. And I'll just read it, it's real quick. Attention Selectmen, it is with great pleasure to announce the scholarship recipients for the 2012 at Narragansett Regional High School Town of Templeton Scholarships. They are Hannah Adams, Mitchell Haley, Thomas Hill, Timothy LaFallum, Erica Lepkowski, Timothy Tebow, and Ashley Wiley. Each selection will receive a scholarship of $350. Students have been requested to show proof of enrollment for second semester in college in order to receive their scholarship money. We're extremely grateful to John Brooks for his fortitude with assembling this year's scholarship committee this year. We at Narragansett Regional are thankful for the generosity of the town of Templeton with recognizing our graduating seniors through scholarships. Discussion on bylaw for sand and gravel pit permits. This is something I think, Jeff, you put on, right?
Yep. Let me brief
Yes, please.
board and the public. There has been some confusion in town about gravel permitting. The board has in the past, prior to my arrival, issued gravel permits and extended permits here and there. And we have, before the board, we put it off, a request for a gravel permit, I believe we called it new permit or permit extension. And Kate helped me, there were two others that were sort of pending in the background, right? So there are three operators who either need or are requiring the status of their permit, what to do. And I've made some inquiries around town, as well as reading the town bylaws, copy of which you have in your book. I don't know how the town got in this situation that we're in or why, but the bylaws are crystal clear. And the reason I bring it up tonight is if we just as a board and as a town agree, we don't really need to take a formal vote, maybe you could, to just follow the bylaws as written. Many of these issues and questions could be resolved. The bylaws require a new permit every 3 years. There's no extension, there's no grandfathering. If you have a permit and it expires at the end of 3 years, you need to come in before the board for a new permit. The grandfathering question is because these bylaws say, if you have a gravel operation at the date of enactment of this bylaw, which was 1963, the exact date of March 9th, 1963. If you had a gravel operation that was in business at that time, and you have operated it continuously since that time, meaning you have removed gravel or material from that pit every year continuously since 1963, and you are still the owner of that pit, you're grandfathered. You don't need to approach the town, there's no need for a permit. However, there are apparently questions being asked, allegations, a lot of issues, people saying, I'm grandfathered. Well, a simple title search would show whether they bought the pit or not, since 1963, in which case, under this bylaw, they're not grandfathered. Or, in the alternative, I understand that Graves actually goes out and works every single one of their pits at least once a year to maintain their grandfather's status, to which I tip my hat and say, good for you, smart thinking, good business. So, the reason for putting it on the agenda and bringing it to your attention is merely to advise, and if I receive no other guidance for the board, I don't need any, I will simply enforce the bylaw. But I advise you that if I go forward and simply enforce the bylaw, which is the law of the town and should have always been enforced, and hasn't been for any reason you care to speculate on, it's bound to stir up the occasional hornet's nest. Because people have not operated in accordance with this bylaw. So, and I don't know who they are, I'm not picking on anyone, I'm just saying the bylaw is clear and we should follow it.
If you would like a list,
Well, I thought one way to proceed.
I can tell this is an issue I've had, and Kate can attest to this. I'm always calling, you got any information on this? Because there's a gravel pit out there, and they're hauling sand. And they have nothing in the selectman's office, I go to Kurt, they know nothing about it. Here they are, you know, it's not grandfathered, got all this in their mouth. And I've tried to coordinate my, who I'm assessing, is sand and gravel. And offhand, I would say the only ones who still are out there since 1963 are probably Henshaw and Merced's. Anybody else? And Graves. And all of Graves.
Well,
But again,
Yeah.
Graves has no problem, he comes before you people, I've got the ones, because that's a big issue. I need plans on file, I need to be assessing, those gravel pits get a big assessment, okay? I need to know, I can tell you who I have, but I need your help with us, because they go before you and they do before planning, to say, this much of my land is gravel pit. Well, I need to be able to assess that 5 acres as a gravel pit, because that brings in the money to this town. I think we need to all get together.
I'd also add that a gravel operation has regulatory requirements. They can't permit the land to, run off onto other property. There's stormwater issues. There are certainly environmental issues with regard to proximity to wetlands, etc. So that's the purpose for the triennial permitting process before the board, to make sure that our planning board, our conservation board, our board of assessors are all in agreement, all in the line, and we grant a new 3-year permit. But we haven't done this recently. So, and we don't need to act tonight. I just want to let you know there was one person to come before the board. I said, hey, hold up there. What is this? You've had this permit 5 years, and you're asking for a new 5-year permit. Well, you shouldn't have had a 3-year with 2 1-year extensions in the first place. So, at a will of the board, I'm asking for a consensus.
Any comments from the board?
I don't think there's any question, but we need to follow the bylaws.
I feel that we should, follow the bylaw, maybe make an exception in this point and actually follow what's written down in our bylaw book.
Anybody want to second it?
A second.
Any other discussion? Any discussion?
I'd be delighted to work with Sue and with planning and with conservation to determine where every pit in town we believe is sited, and then we could maybe do a letter to everyone and review our files and clean all this up. It'll be a nice little work project for the summer into the fall. Just, please show us your status. We can check when the title was last transferred and legitimize the whole thing from beginning to end. And we'll treat everyone the same. That'll be the key. We'll treat everybody the same.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to follow the town bylaws for the sand and gravel permits. Jeff?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
Okay. We have an article here that Julie asked to put on about the ethics liaison, ethics in OML.
Yeah. I want to thank Rich Curtis for getting back to me with the responsibilities of a job description as much as you could get from the state. I do appreciate that. This came up because there was some discussion at our prior meeting that members of boards who were appointed, not new hires in the town, weren't getting the information they needed to fulfill the ethics and the open meeting law requirements. And this can set people up for some very serious fines. So my concern is that they weren't getting the information that they needed in order to comply with these laws. And I felt part of the problem was either a miscommunication when they went down to the town clerk's office. They weren't getting the information because what was communicated to me was that the town clerk was saying you need to go to the ethics liaison. But the job and duty responsibilities of the ethics liaison is not to hand out the ethics and the open meeting law material to everyone who is hired and appointed. That's right. All right, that job falls under the town clerk. So I wasn't sure if we looked at it and had some discussion, if we made the town clerk the ethics liaison, none of the confusion would be there. It's all housed in one spot. All of the duties and responsibilities would be with that one office, that one person. Because anyone who's appointed has to go and get sworn in at the town clerk's office. So that was my thinking on this issue, because there are some very serious fines involved with violating ethics, conflict of interest, appearance of conflict of interest. You have to take the test every 2 years, it has to be on file with the town clerk in order to be in compliance. The liaison officer is basically to do the paperwork and make sure people are in compliance.
Rich?
Well, put it mildly, we are way not compliant with this stuff. The state gives you from January 1st to April 2nd, I believe it is, to get this all done. And then anybody hired after April 2nd has 30 days in which to comply with the education material we're supposed to do. Right now, at this present time, I think 105 people, and this is all important to know, 105 people have complied, 119 have not, and we're already past the deadline. That's the entire town. There is a clause in there that says something about all volunteers and everybody else that work for the town are applicants. So you've got more problems than just that, and I think actually there wasn't really that much of a problem there. If you have the personnel board putting it in their package, and the clerk's office telling people when they're being sworn in, there's your two areas of entering into the town. And when they get the forms, or when the clerk gets the forms, she'll be giving to me, and I've been setting them aside.
Okay. Beth?
I was sworn in a couple of weeks ago at the town clerk's office. And I walked out of there, and I happened to stop in the town office building, and they said, "Did you get your paperwork?" And I said, "No, I didn't get anything at all." And I found Mr. Ritter gave me a copy of the paperwork I have to study to take the test. Now, it would have made a lot more sense for me to go to the town clerk's office, get sworn in, and receive the paperwork there, than walking out without it.
Rich?
I think where the problem lies is that the clerk was under the impression that once I became the liaison, that I was taking over this whole thing.
Right.
And that's not the way it's set up.
No, I thought you were just actually like for complaints, you know, if,
In fact, when I talked to the lawyers in Boston,
yeah.
they would rather not hear from me. They would rather hear from the person. If you have an issue,
Oh, so
they want you to call. So it's not going through.
But we are required even
yeah.
to have the liaison.
Yes, Virginia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, basically, that's what I was going to say. There was a confusion with Carol, and she said that to me, too. She thought that once that happened, that she wasn't responsible for it anymore. But she also was thinking that the appointments that were being made, because it was being made by the selectmen, that those were coming from, as a matter of fact, that's where I got mine, from Nancy in the selectman's office. So I think we need to decide who's giving them out and who's that. And if we decide that Carol's giving them all out, that's fine. But we just need to make sure that the person that's doing it knows that they're supposed to be giving them all out. That's all. Okay, well, we have to, under the law, we have to designate a municipal liaison to the Ethics Commission. And,
Virginia, I can answer that.
okay,
In essence, your
good
job is
idea.
to certify the town. Your job is to be the watcher of whoever, whether it's Carol or Nancy or whoever in the town is in fact doing the work to make sure that
No.
My job is literally to accept phone calls from the state,
to be the single point of contact.
a single point of contact.
Right.
They might call to ask how we're doing with compliance with our educational materials. They haven't gotten a call.
That's what I'm saying. You're the officer
But
of the charge.
It's not, I'm not even, technically, I'm not even supposed to do this part of it, but I'm doing. I'm supposed to get that information and
Pass it
relay
on.
it if necessary. If they need to know where any past employees live, I have to run them down, give them the contact information, issues like that. But there is, it does say in the law, or the requirement for the liaison, something about if somebody asks me a question, I have to get the permission to call the
Right.
legal department and talk it over with them. Well, when I talked to the legal department, they told me that they would much rather hear directly from the person so that there is no in-between person.
Never happens.
Just tell me what Boston just told me.
Yes, Will?
I truly believe in one-stop shopping. Have everything in one particular area. When you end up going in sworn in, that should be the focal point.
Not everybody gets sworn in.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets sworn in.
Well, that should be one area that you can, at least for those people that get sworn in.
It is, right?
They should be getting they should also be getting the paperwork all at that time.
They used to, but she was under the impression that
So, yeah, but then you have the issue of new hires. I think Rich said it, the new hires should get it in their packet when they become new hires.
Right.
Yes, but
And then it's
Yeah,
going
one time, all the paperwork used to come from the treasurer's office. She had all the paperwork when it was a new hire or whatever, came from, her office, and it was taken away from her, brought into the selectman's office under the personnel administrator assistant. And she has the packets, as I know it right now, and they should all be in that packet. And you come to work here, you go see her, you get your doctor's physical and all that, she hands you the folder with everything you gotta do. It should all be, like Will said, one-stop shopping, right there.
well, the only difference would be elected and appointed more officials would
At
have
some point in time, you still gotta cross the path of the personnel administrator. Such as-
not if they're
And
they do if they're
also the
appointed,
law
if
is
they're-
very clear that it's the clerk that has to maintain the completed files.
All the personnel records.
But if you're an appointed, like to the Recreation Commission, you don't get paid. All you do is go down to Carol's office and get sworn in. You don't have to fill out W-2s, W-4s, whatever.
True, but don't they have to have a physical?
No, they're just on a committee. Yes, Rich?
Also, something else that we're not doing here, it says in here that each year, every state, county, and municipal employee must be given a summary of the conflict of interest law prepared
Yep.
by the Ethics Commission, and every 2 years, they must complete an online training program. Well, this year, it was sent out, I've got the email that was sent to me in January, in which I complied with what it said, it told me to go online and do the online test. So I did that. Well, they were also supposed to hand us a copy of the conflict of interest law, and that wasn't an issue. It's being done as part of the employment package. If you get hired, if you're already an employee, you're not getting it.
Okay, so we need to fix that.
Yeah.
That's another change.
Well, how are you gonna do that, though, if you're in Florida or Illinois?
It's very easy, the same way I did the 2
states of emergency for Florida. And quite honestly, Bud didn't even know I was there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me being in Florida.
I did okay without you.
All right. So, all right, let's get back to the subject. It's getting late. So I guess what we need to do is make sure Carol starts taking care of people that are getting sworn in again and giving them these
Right.
packages.
And packages.
Especially now because all the boards are getting re-sworn in.
Right.
I'm
Well,
sure.
right now, we're going to be appointing people
Right.
to boards, committees, and commissions, so I want to make sure that they have the information they need so they're in compliance.
Yeah.
Ethics compliance materials.
And then, I'm sure it's in the new hire packages. Let's just make sure it still is.
So then they're all not gonna come from Carol, some are gonna come from,
No, the new hire should have it in the new hire package. Carol would do anybody that gets sworn in.
but everybody has to understand that the completed ones are supposed to go to Carol. The clerk is supposed to keep all of the records.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we just need to get Carol to know that. I guess we'll be all set.
You're gonna talk to Carol?
Well, we'll have to.
I just,
Bob?
phone call, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of this was created because at one point I actually had a little faith in the Ethics Commission. If anybody deals with them very long, they will lose that very fast. I also thought that having a liaison with the Ethics Commission might be a good idea because he could have acted as a mediator. This is not the way this position works. This position is pretty much useless. And unless we're going to have the person that's going to pass out the paperwork, keep track of the paperwork, there's no point in having a liaison. I mean, if that's all they're gonna do is call and ask, yeah, about an address, I think the clerk can find the address maybe faster than he can, or...
But the state says we have to have it.
Other towns, it is either the clerk or the coordinator that is the liaison. There isn't a special position. With my dealings with the ethics and my new consideration of the value of having a liaison with any state agency is got pretty thin, and I'm not sure where we need to go with this, but in most towns, it's the coordinator or the clerk.
Well, do we want to? It's very clear that we have to appoint somebody.
And we have to get on top of all the people that are out of compliance.
Exactly.
I think mine needs to be done. All right. So Carol's gonna start handing those out again to people that she's...
Yeah.
Huh?
No, we didn't vote to do that.
I think Rich will still be... Is Rich still gonna do what he's doing? I said, is Rich still gonna do what he's doing?
It's not on our list.
I couldn't, huh?
Why don't we just leave it the way it is, and then we'll come back and appoint whoever for that, you know,
For what?
for the ethics liaison.
Oh, okay.
Leave it, like you said, leave it for now. I mean, he's finding out who's behind and
All right.
everything right now, and let's let that happen, and then we'll,
Okay. Do we want to go on to the appointments, action on appointments?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we do this list, I want to do this list. We need names filled in on some of these. We need a member. Are you on capital planning already?
Well, to my knowledge.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought
would you like to be?
So we need a member from the board for the capital planning committee.
I'm on the personnel board. That's all I'm on. Well, I just Googled it.
Well, we're gonna go through that. We're not gonna do that one tonight anyway. But we need a person for capital planning. We need a second person, I guess, for the senior center. We have you, we need one more, right? We need two.
Yeah.
Pandemic response, we need a member, and in Virginia, we need an alternate as well.
That's a hard
When-
one because it meets during the day.
Yeah.
That's why I signed up originally, but I couldn't do it anymore.
You guys meet during the day?
I don't know, I've not been to it yet. I've not been to it yet.
Well, that would just probably leave you and Jeff, if it's a day meeting.